Hi there. It's October 31st and we're continuing our journey through the short book of Lamentations, this book of 5 chapters of laments called Kinot in Hebrew, and the name of the book in Hebrew is Echa, and Echa means how, because of the first word in the book, how has Jerusalem fallen, how things have been destroyed. So we come today to chapters 4 and 5, and we remind ourselves that these chapters, chapter 4 is an acrostic poem. Each line is a successive letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and the last chapter, chapter 5, even though it's also 22 chapters, it breaks the acrostic pattern and is a prayer directed to God. So in chapter 4, the lamentation continues. It looks at Jerusalem as being once of gold and of precious stones, her people as being like gold and precious stones, but now the gold has tarnished, the precious stones have been spilt out all over the streets, everything's become like clay rather than precious stones, they're being broken down. It reminds us, the broken clay pot reminds us perhaps of the words of Jeremiah, who went down to the house of the potter and saw the pot broken up in the hands of the potter, and also there's a picture in Jeremiah of the pot being smashed. So this is very much remembering those words. It says, even the rich and the well-fed are living on rubbish tips. It portrays a terrible fall of people who used to be rich, used to be well off. It says that the multicoloured people, the people who had so many wonderful hues, who wore wonderful clothes, have now become like soot, covered in soot. It says those who died were better off than those who lived. And it even refers to the horror, the unbelievable horror of infanticide for cannibalism, and we just can't imagine how terrible that kind of event would be. But the lamenter is lamenting over it happening in Jerusalem. It says the fall of Jerusalem is unbelievable. No one could imagine that foreign kings would be coming through the gates of Jerusalem, but it has happened, and it's because of the unfaithfulness of our priests, it's because of the unfaithfulness of the people in their walk with God. They've become like lepers, they've become polluted. But their eyes are still looking, it says at the end of chapter 4, their eyes are still looking for the Lord's deliverance, even though it seemed as though they've been trapped. And the last part of chapter 4 is a warning to Edom, their neighbours, who maybe are gloating over the fall of Jerusalem, that the same fate is coming to them, that they too will fall. And then lastly, chapter 5 is really a prayer. It's a call to God, putting before the Lord the terrible situation that Judah and Jerusalem are in. It says, remember us, Lord, remember us. We feel as if we have been orphaned, as though we've lost our father. Egypt and Assyria have both failed us. They've not been of help to us. Just the very getting of our food puts our lives at risk. And then it takes that famous phrase about you've turned our mourning into dancing. It turns it around and says, you've turned now our dancing has become like mourning. You've turned our joy into sadness. Jackals prowl around Jerusalem. It's become unrecognizable. And then this call at the end, why do you not remember us, Lord? Why have you forgotten us? Bring us back to yourself. And this call, which traditionally in the singing and in the chanting of Lamentations 5, this call at the end is repeated a number of times at the end of the whole prayer. Bring us back to yourself, renew our days as before. Bring us back to yourself, renew our days as before. So the whole book ends with this appeal to God to restore the people to how they were before. It's amazing that we have a God who is a God of renewal, who is a God who renews things as they were. Even in the most terrible destruction, even in the midst of the most terrible loss, God is able to reach in and to renew and to change and to bring about life. We see it most of all in the story of and in the life and death and resurrection of Jesus Messiah, who dies on the cross, and it looks as though everything has been destroyed. It looks as though God has forgotten him. In fact, he says on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? But in resurrection, in the power of resurrection, in the promise and in the hope of resurrection, there is renewal. Just as the singer at the end of Lamentations says, God, turn this around, turn us around, bring us back to yourself, renew our life as in the days of old. Have a very good October 31st.